And we're back with some more Factorio. And today we're going to be doing oil. Now, if you haven't seen any of the episodes so far, you're going to be completely lost. I'm sorry. But this is what our base is roughly going to be targeting to look like, though very, very vaguely. And today we're going to be doing in the oil section, which is going to have to be squeezed in between here and here. And there is definitely not enough space, so yeah, we'll just make ourselves some room. We can replace that other side when we figure out how big oil is going to end up. Oil looks like it's going to be rather big. We need about 26 oil refineries to make this work. That's 26. That's a lot. Now, over here, we've got an older design I used that's much smaller and for a much more petite base, but this would be the general idea. The oil would come along the center rail, dump into, some storage tanks, and then they would feed into the oil refineries. Unfortunately for us, these oil refineries, there is 10. So this is a much smaller version, which is like, we're going to need 2.5 times this size. Squeezing this in is going to be quite tricky. As well as that, we need a whole bunch of these. There's pipe limitations and all that. I'm thinking the plan should be maybe round this up just a little bit, and we'll break it into 2 chunks. I figure if we break it into 2 chunks, we can then design one, and then just double it. That should, in theory, sort us out. The hard part is designing one. The first problem we run into immediately is just the amount of inputs and outputs on liquids starts getting out of control. And the big problem we face is, say, this. This is the petroleum output, and if we have to have 2 stacks of oil refineries in a row, it just won't work, because when we try and output the petroleum, the maximum range on those underground pipes is that far, unless you want to start throwing in mods, which we're not going to do. So that means we can't actually stack the oil refineries this direction. We're going to have to turn them, 90 degrees. Problem you face with getting oil out of these refineries is, well, there's 3 different outputs, and you're only allowed to have 2 tiles of space between the oil refineries and these beacons. These beacons give a massive speed boost, so you really do want to keep them there. And if you remove them, you can get the oil out easier, but it's far, far less efficient. So you're usually stuck bringing 2 of them out, like this direction. But then the third one will have to go out straight across. So it'll have to hop across the beacons with these. And usually what you do is you send the petroleum across. The reason being is petroleum is your main output. That's the one you want the most of. That's the one you're going to spend the most of. And as well as that, you're going to convert most of the light and heavy oil into more petroleum anyway. You can convert light and heavy oil directly to petroleum by combining it with water in another process. So what we're going to end up doing is pretty much converting everything into petroleum, and this will be our main output line right here. So let me put some light oil conversion right here. Done. These are chemical plants. Chemical plants can have a bunch of recipes. The one we're using is we're converting light oil to petroleum. There's other ones you can do in here. In fact, there's an awful lot, but let's not get tied up in those ones just yet. So this allows us to turn all of this light oil into petroleum. Now, we're not going to deal with the outputs of that just yet, or hooking up the light oil to this just yet. You see, we've also got another problem. We've got to take in the heavy oil, and we want to make sure we've got all the heavy oil in here as well, and we're going to need some of that heavy oil to make lubricant, so 1 minute. Well, that got ridiculously out of hand. Trying to fit in this heavy oil cracking just, oh my god, it almost broke me. The problem was there's just too many inputs and outputs. You've got 2 spaces here. You can only have 2 spaces between the buildings and the speed beacons, which we desperately need. Which means it turns into pipe spaghetti 5 seconds after you start, and then you end up with a pounding headache trying to figure out how you're going to squeeze it all together. What we ended up doing was moving all of the petroleum to out this direction. And what we ended up doing instead was pushing all the light oil across to this line, which this used to be our water line, and then pushing the water line back. Yeah, this has got entirely messy. In fact, you know what? I think we are going to start this sucker up, and then we're going to try and explain what horrific mess this is. But, so long as it started, at least we'll be able to see more accurately what the mess looks like. To simulate the load it's going to be under normally, we're going to have a train here, and we're dumping a whole bunch of oil onto it. Those pipes there are generating crude oil, which will get pumped onto these wagons, and then we're going to pull it out with these pumps, which will dump it into this delivery system right here. And we want to make sure that we can hit capacity. And for capacity, we're looking at about 50,000 petroleum per minute. That's the kind of target we're aiming for. And we turn this on. Crude oil starts getting pumped into these. Wow, those fluid wagons are instantly filled. And these are not instantly filled. Okay, wow, you're taking your sweet time. Oh, never mind. The end one is actually emptying a lot quicker. Yeah, that's kind of to be expected. Anyway, the oil is getting ripped along here, dumped into all of these. Has it hit the end yet? What the? Why are you not pumping out? 1 moment, I'm going to make some changes. Never mind, isolated the fault. It was just a little problem with the pipe. Done. All of these are running flat out. Every single last one of them. Alright, you just want to make sure that all of these are clear because they're pulling out heavy oil, light oil, and petroleum. And the petroleum is the one you don't want backing up. We want to have, these 2 are the ones you don't want backing up. You want to be converting everything to petroleum if you need to. So what happens here is all the petroleum gets shunted all the way down here and dumped into this tank. And this tank, it's just consuming all of it. All of it's being destroyed right now because we just want to make sure we can run this at max capacity. Then the light oil comes across here and gets dumped into this pipe over here. This is our light oil pipe. Light oil gets shunted right back in here, which is a light oil cracking facility, which turns that light oil back into petroleum. So this is a weird hodgepodge, back and forth hopscotch, which turns all the light oil into petroleum. And then that petroleum gets shunted down here. You can see these little pipes going through here until it gets to the same storage tank where it then gets destroyed. That will, of course, be consumed by our normal processes later. Then comes the heavy oil. The heavy oil is a bit weird because we do need to turn some of that into lubricant. Now, lubricant, you don't need that much of it, but what we do have is all the heavy oil is basically shunted all the way down here, gets all the way to the end, and the first stop, lubricant. Any lubricants that's produced is dumped into this tank. We don't even have any flow controls on this. All the excess heavy oil will just get sent down here where it's turned into light oil. And that light oil, well, that's just sent back across to our light oil line where it's cracked into more petroleum. And theoretically, if we've done this right, in fact, can we speed this up? Oh, yes, we can. Ooh, I like this mode. Well, let's go into production and have a quick look at fluids. How are we doing for the last minute? We are at 84,000 oil? What? Per minute? That's pretty good. Let's give this a minute to make sure it's actually stable and keeps up at that number. After running it for 10 minutes, we can confirm that is an accurate petroleum output. Right. I think we're done there. That is perfection. That will give us all of, well, not all. Let me put it a different way. This is a good start. All we need now is about, 2 more of those, and we've got enough to run one module, which means there's 8 modules. 8, 16, never mind. Let's just build one module. That looks more like it. That's enough to run one module. We just need about 8 of those and we should be fine. And if we check on fluids here, yeah, that looks about right. 249? Yeah, about 49,000 petroleum per minute. That seems like a good chunk. Let's check on the power draw. Power requirements, yeah. 280 or 90 megawatts. Okay, that's a little bit of a hungry build, but we've finally sorted petroleum production. This is oil finished. Well, we'll be copy-pasting this into the other 4 modules. It does mean we're going to have to leave a lot of space between these rails over here and this oil production facility. But at least that gets us started. Let me slow that down a bit. The game looks a bit wonky with all those clouds moving so quickly. Alright, with that done, I think it's time we can tackle the next step, which is furnaces. We need to start being able to smelt, which is just the basic number 1 step we need to just get into this. So let's set up a quick smelter setup. Getting into smelting is going to lead us into, well, the difficult part of this build now. You see, we have to load things onto these trains and take them off. And how do you measure throughput? I mean, if you were measuring throughput on a transport belt, that's simple. You know exactly how much a transport belt can carry per second, and then that's it. You just work out how much it can carry, and you're done. Now, we know how many wagons go through, but we also have to go with how fast the trains are going, how many wagons go through, how many inserters we have putting them on, how many inserters we have putting them off. Let me try and give you an example. Let's say we want to take some iron ore, dump it onto this cargo wagon, and take it over here and dump it off to get smelted into iron or steel. Well, the first thing we have to do is put an inserter on there, and that inserter will chuck on 146 iron ore in 5 seconds. And we need to have space on every single one of the wagons to hold that much ore, otherwise it won't be able to fill it. So, oh wait, that one's went too fast. This one, alright, here we go. This wagon should 144, 144. My numbers are wrong. 144 on each wagon. So if we check that one there, damn it, stop moving so fast. Then when it gets to the other end, we need an inserter to rip it off. But it has to be a filtered inserter so that it will only take off the correct one, because we're going to start putting other things on this, not just the iron ore. And you'll notice the exact amount of iron ore put on actually gets ripped off. Now, of course, once things saturate up and they fill up, we'll actually end up with a little bit of ore staying on the train. That's not a problem. But this does mean that every time we put an inserter on something, we also have to assign out wagon chunks to it based on how much space it takes up. So iron ore will take up 3 slots. However, 150 iron plate will only take up 2. In fact, you can fit 100 iron plate per slot. Green circuits take up 200 per slot. So we have to assign out slots and then make sure we have the correct inserters on them. Also, we need to make sure that we're pulling off the resources on the same wagons we put them on at this station. Yeah, yeah, it's not at all mind melty. And then you also have to figure out what kind of throughput am I getting. So this, how much resources am I getting through per minute? Because this is actually a throughput thing. It's like a transport belt. So how much is it? Here we have our resources and inserters set up. Now I retested all the trains. I made some improvements to the track, and we've got our wagons per minute up to 114.66. Well, the important bit is, say, trains per minute is 172. If we divide that by 15, it tells us how many trains pass through per minute. And then if we throw on the inserters, one inserter onto it, we can work out how much resources it throws on and how much it throws off. And that means with one inserter, we're processing 1,651.2 resources per minute, or that's the throughput. That's the throughput of one inserter lifting on and off. And from that, we have to figure out how to build our base. Hopping onto the Kirk McDonald calculator, this is all the resources we're planning on processing through this section. It's 750 science per minute per module, so that means we're going to need 438 smelters doing iron plate. And for steel, we're going to need 291. Oh boy. Right, so we're going to need at least 2 smelting sections. One moment. Much later. Alright, so this here, I know, it looks a little bit large, looks a little bit ungainly, but bear in mind, this is only about a third of what we're actually going to build. Yeah, this is half of our steel setup. This is, we'll start here at the end. It's, you know what, here's fine. This here is a requester chest. It requests iron ore. The iron ore gets stuck in here. The iron ore gets fed into these 2 iron plate producers. They chuck out iron plate to the right. The iron plate gets fed into the steel smelters. The steel smelters feed it into this passive provider chest. That passive provider chest feeds it back over here. Now, we haven't set up the trains to pick it up and turn it on and off. We sort of want to figure out how much space we're going to need before we even think about doing that. And as you can see, it's a lot of space. We also got to make sure that the logistics network can reach it. If you hover over one of these, you can see that orange is how far the logistics drones can reach. That's the ones that go along and pick up little items and move them about for you. The green area is how far the construction robots can go. We're not worried about that at the moment. So if we place these right here on the very, very edge, that means, where is it? Yeah, we place it right there. That means our people can get right to the very end and pull in the necessary resources. It works out just barely. See, they're able to pull it from there, but they can't go one tile further. So, yeah, that is a perfectly efficient little build. Now we just need to double that down. One quick double down later, and this whole thing is now twice the size. So this gives us an awful lot of steel. That'll in fact produce all the steel we require. However, we still need to produce the iron plate as well that goes with it, so for that we chucked in this over here. One thing I never covered about smelting, it's to do with these things here. These things are great. They're speed beacons. They boost the speed of anything caught in the radius of them, which is wonderful. And normally what you end up doing is putting your things 2 tiles away, and then you put these 2 tiles away. Wait, no, 1, 2, never mind. Something like that. So you're basically getting yourself just at the edge of usefulness of those things. And then this thing is in range of about 8 different items. You can see up there in the middle right there, you can see number of effect sources 8 because it's in range of 8 of these speed beacons, which is perfection. However, when you start doing it this way, the reason we stagger them like this is this allows us to do direct insertion or just cut down on a bunch of annoying things. For example, here we can have this one requester chest is requesting iron ore and it's being fed into 3 smelters. And then this here is the output where all the iron plate goes, and it's being fed into by 3 smelters. So by doing this sort of staggered little zigzag up and down, we're able to cut down on the amount of chests that are required, which means less items, which means it should be easier on the game to actually process it all, meaning we should be able to build a bigger base before the computer falls over. Well, the CPU kind of starts sweating too heavily. And that is why you have zigzag smelter setups. And that's why our smelter setup is going to look like this. Now, I think I'm going to leave off on doing the trains until the very end, after we've designed all of these things. The reason being, we also need to worry about a couple of other things that we're going to have to change along the way. Load balancing. For example, if we say request all the iron ore down in these 4 wagons down here, then it's going to pull all the iron ore from this section of the delivery trains. See these delivery trains that will be passing through? Which means at the end, they'll be sending logistics drones back and forth all the way really far distances. So we need to make sure we spread out the draw so that it's evenly across the provider train so we don't result in any of that happening, or cut down on it as much as possible. With all of that done, actually, let's just check on our production. How is our production looking after 10 minutes? We're doing 91,000 iron plate per minute and 12,000 steel plate per minute. That's a lot. According to the calculator, 292 steel furnaces with productivity modules level 3 and in range of 8 beacons should produce 7,000 steel, not 9,000. Okay, I don't know what's going on there. I'm going to have to double check into that because we can't be letting that happen. But for the time being, the oil is finished. We now produce all of the oil products we need. That was probably the hardest part of... Actually, the hardest part of any build, I think, is doing the oils. The oil is just so painful. But with that done, steel plate done, second steel plate done, and all the iron plate done, that just leaves copper, and that'll be probably the last one, big one, and then it'll be down to the smaller builds. Actually, no, red circuits are also a big one. We'll be chewing into the rest of the builds after that. I'm going to cut this out here because my brain, frankly, can't take any more of this. This thing is... the joy of Factorio is how much it hurts, but at the same time, it really does drain your brain every time you get into it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and good luck.